saw the film the first time, I was really just amazed at the great material you guys were able to put together. Can you talk about how you were able to weave all this amazing stuff together, and where'd you find it?
We were quite lucky in a way, because the previous film we made was on Love and Arthur Lee, and there was never any film footage, and there was never any, you wouldn't let people take us photographs of film the audience and things like that. So with this, fortunately, you know, the band did various TV appearances. I mentioned before, Mike Walsh, who filmed some fantastic footage when they were over in the US quite often. And, you know, they were well covered in the press as well, you know, so there's lots of press cuttings and things like that. And members of the band has kept stuff as well, so there was, you know, Negrodes, kind of, you know, photos and scrapbooks. So it seemed like we were quite fortunate, lots of people had kept lots of artifacts, I guess. So that's good.
Ian, if I can ask you, I mean, one of the periods that this film goes over that really doesn't touch upon was the outbreak of punk music in the UK. And I was wondering how they related to Mott and you related to them.
That was fun because the media over there, which changes once a fortnight, decided that we would be hated by the punk movement. And I was over here actually, because I came over here about that time, 75. But when I went back, because of people like Mick Jones, and Tom Robinson, people like that, they really liked us, the punks really liked us, and to see the press then do a U-turn was fun.
Was the press fairly powerful at that time in terms of careers and what they could do or not do to somebody?
Probably not, but you know, we lived and died by it. So to see them totally wrong about something was good fun. No, I mean, I don't think it would have altered anything. Punk came as a reaction against glam, and as we had come as a reaction against blues and flower power. England's kind of like that, backwards, forwards. And so if it's been somebody who's showing off, then the next is going to be somebody who's very, very humble and man the streetish. I always remember one of the guys in quite a famous punk band in England. He's like, "Hey, Ian, never mind. My dad owns half of Brighton." Don't say nothing. One of the damned, actually.
Let me get some questions from all of you. Yes, sir.
What was the feeling like when you got back together with the group in 2009?
Let me just repeat it for everybody. What was the feeling like when you got back together with the group in 2009?
It was great. You know, the business end of it sucks. Still does to this day. But to be in a rehearsal room with them again, and you know, to see Buffalo, who's had a lot of trouble over the last few years, and fortunately seems to be getting better. And to play with him again, and Pete is like a lunatic. I mean, it's just so much fun playing with him, rehearsing with him. And all the usual stupidity that the band had. I was worried it wouldn't be there, but it was. We had a great time.
Yes, ma'am.
Two questions. Mr. Hunter, any plans to bring the band to New York?
Any plans to bring the band to New York?
I don't know.
Please?
I don't want to say no, I'm bumming that, and I don't want to say yeah because I'm not really up for it. I'm too old.
Okay. Aww.
But you never know. I mean, I never knew we were going to do that. I mean, if you'd have asked me 4 or 5 years ago, I said, no way in hell, you know.
Mm-hmm. And is this going to be available commercially, this movie?
It's out on DVD. It's already out in the UK. It's out over here middle of November.
Great.
November the 16th.
Thank you.
Great.
I'd like to ask Ian to talk a little bit about the American lead Childers, who brought a little bit of the kind of Bowie-esque kind of image which the band was trying to move from, but he stayed and managed the band or toured with the band. Could you talk about Lee's interaction with the band?
Question to Ian, if he could talk a little bit more about Lee Childers and his management of the band.
Well, Lee worked for DeFreeze, Tony. There was Lee and there was Tony Zanetta, who had both been in Hair at the Roundhouse in London. And when that ran out, somehow they wound up with DeFreeze at Guns N' Grow. And they just turned themselves into roadies. I mean, none of the people that worked for the Freeze were who they were supposed to be. I mean, the secretaries were not secretaries, they were fans who we could get on the cheap, you know. And everybody turned themselves into bailiffs. It was very much, I remember seeing the books. I mean, the books it was a joke. I mean, I think we had more money than David. I think David was in the plus for about £2, and we had about £168 in the bank. So we were the rich, and all this was going all over the world with David, and David had nothing. It was a calculated risk, and it came off. RCA still talk about it. Boy, did they get taken.
When the band talked about Mick Ronson not talking to them, were you aware of that, and how did... No.
Not at all. You know, there's two versions at the back end there, you know. And they say that they couldn't afford to get breakfast. I mean, I remember them being in the room, the furthest table away from us. And I would sit with Mick because somebody had to sit with Mick. I mean, we just joined the band. You know. And Buff will say he wasn't talking to anybody, but I remember joining the band, you know, in '69. Nobody spoke to me. The country boys, you know, they don't say too much. I mean, Stan came up, who I thought was going to hit me because I just took his gig. And Stan was great, but the rest of them just ignored me, you know. This went on for a couple of weeks.
Chris, in making the film, what did you discover about Mott? What were the things you discovered, I guess?
Quite a lot, really, because it's a strange story, and you're sort of looking for certain things that happen in a lot of music documentaries that don't happen. It's almost like, you know, they make it and then everything starts going wrong for them instantly, you know, but it seems like they were never far from disaster, really, throughout the story. So there's lots of kind of, it feels like, you know, it's gaining momentum and everything's picking up, and then something will happen or someone will leave. And so it was an odd film to make because you had people kind of constantly leaving, really. So it was I don't know, it's said in the film, you know, it's got to climb up the mountains and fall down the holes, you know, and it seemed like that, you know, lots of ups and downs and things that go right and then immediately followed by something going wrong. So I don't know, it's a very singular band, I'd say.
All the way in the back there, personally.
Thank you. I thought you weren't looking back here after a while. I have a question about Over Watts, and it's the director. Is there any reason why we don't really see him interviewed at all in the film?
Why don't we see over him?
He just didn't want to be interviewed. He made his position clear right at the beginning, and you know, we kept trying. We tried to persuade him. We wrote to him. You know, various communications, people trying to have a word with him on our behalf. He just didn't want to do it. I mean, you know, you can't really argue with that. He didn't want to do it. I think he just prefers to live his life without talking about it. I mean, you know, I don't know how Ian felt, but I was sort of fairly amazed that he agreed to get back together for the gigs at the time.
Once Pete's in, he's in, 100%. But getting him in, because he loves walking. He walks on his own all over Britain. You know, he does that kind of Bill Bryson thing. And for him to do that, it's very difficult for Pete to do that, because he has a lot of nervous energy. He's a very strange guy. And he's not at all what people seem to think he is. He can talk all night. You can't get a word in with Pete. But he knows the amount of effort involved in getting into any situation. And unfortunately, this movie was being done during the thing that we were doing, and he'd had enough. I mean, that's all he wanted to do was get off and get on his own and get back to walking again, you know. Pete's lovely. Pete's great. It's not because he's bitchy that he doesn't want to be part of this. It's just, it's too much for him. He doesn't like it.
Did he stay in music at all after he left Mott, or after Mott was finished?
Well, that's got something to do with it too, you know. I mean, yeah, there was a couple of things that they went through, but in the end, you know, he just doesn't bother anymore. He doesn't like it. He hates the industry. He hates the business. He feels that the business screwed him, and you know, I have a lot of sympathy with him in that area. And he just doesn't want anything to do with it. With the band getting together, and I think Pete would do it again. It's not that, it's the business around it that causes all the aggravation, you know.
Has it changed much, the business, or pretty much the same as...
Sorry? Pretty much it's a bit more, how can we put it, sophisticated, you know, but it's still stinks. And that's why I like being outside of it. You know, the whole band, I mean, nobody wants to be inside of it that's got any brains. I mean, you stay outside of it. Just run a nice little parallel down the side there, you know. That's good.
Yes, also in the back.
Chris, when you found out that Mott was getting back together, what was your feeling? I mean, I assume you were planning this film prior to learning that.
Yeah, we'd started filming about a year before, and in fact, we'd asked you when, the first time we interviewed you, and you said at the time, there's always offers flying about, but you had your doubts about whether or not it was a good idea, and then, you know, and then it did get back together. I think one of your concerns was, like, would you still have the power, and would you still have the, you know, be able to kind of find that level of power, and it certainly, you know, I mean, the concerts were fantastic. I mean, anyone who is here that went to them, I bumped into Mick Jones a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying, you know, he thought it was better than it was first time round. You know, so.
It was, I mean, Pete and Fally especially, because they hadn't played in so long. They walked in, I mean, Pete knew that set better than I did, and told me on more than one occasion. Yeah, and Fal was amazing, and I mean, Fal's hilarious. I mean, he's just got an organ and two Leslies stuck in his brain, and that's the way it is, you know. No, I mean, I got nothing bad to say about it. The business, that's another thing altogether, but the band, loved it, loved it.
Yes.
I don't really have a question, but I was wondering why it is that you're the most kind of autobiographical rock star. I used to see you in Recording Greyhound when I was a teenager, and you had the Ballad of Mott. Saturday Gigs was clearly a song about Croydon, and those times you wrote your book. Now you're in a movie. What is it that you know? Why do you think you are so interested in being the one that exposes these things, or puts
Question for Ian about
the truth into the work?
why so much of your work autobiographical or reflective on your own life, your own career.
Well, I guess because it's me. I watch the TV, that's pretty boring. I look at the paper, there's not much going on there. I might as well talk about me.
Yes, sir.
Ian, were you aware of the effect that you had on Guy Stevens? Obviously, Guy had an effect on you, but that quote that in the movie, that he couldn't handle working with you or never got over working with you. Were you aware of that at the time?
I really don't know. That's one I don't really understand. There was something going on, there was a connection there, yeah. There was something deep going there, but what it was, we never spoke about anything like that, you know. We just seemed to get very close at one point, and that was around that time. And I was having a bad time personally, and he was too. So maybe that was it, you know.
Yes.
Yes. Ian, fantastic. Movie was great. After 35 years, what was the final thing that would bring the band together again?
How were you able to bring the band together again after 35 years of being apart?
It was Fally, the organ player. I was over there doing an acoustic tour, and Fally was going, you know, Pete kind of feels like he wants to do it, and Buff wants to do it, and I'm saying Pete wants to do it. Yeah, Pete wants to do it. I don't know if that was true or not, but that's what Fally was saying. And then he said, you know, if we don't do it now, we never will. And so I rang Mick. I said, do you want to do it? He said, yeah, let's do it. And that was it. It was all over really quickly. When the band just decides something, it's fine, you know. It's just when people outside the band get to be part of the decision making, it's where it gets all messed up. And I'm sure that's the same for a lot of bands.
Yes.